Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Greetings, everybody watching for tonight's episode of Movie Nights, where we are going to be doing something by looking at, well, I was going to say something different, but not really different, because as everyone knows, cultural warfare has been the name of the game and the theme of many of the presentations that either I've done with Gordon or that you've seen in the previous videos over the course of the past, it must be 8 weeks now of Movie Nights on Monday nights. Aesthetics is very important. Culture is very important. Obviously, last week we had an introduction to our film, Edgar Allan Poe's Final Mystery, the Final Mystery, dealing with the battles over literature. What would be the American literary tradition? What would shape the tastes, the idea of beauty, the understanding of ugliness around the 19th century? What were the battle lines? What role did Edgar Allan Poe play within that process, as well as obviously people like James Fenimore Cooper, a close ally of Poe. In previous weeks, even before that, we had presented something on The Devil at Woodstock, which featured David Gosselin as my guest when we screened his recent film, dealing with the musical control or the influence over the musical scene, as well as the philosophy and the cults that were being organized by the CIA and other three-letter agencies that had organized much of the worst of what humanity went through during the Cold War. So much of the thing that's very close to the hearts of many baby boomers who are young people living through that weird process in human history and encountering a lot of abundant drugs, a world going insane. The drugs were everywhere, easily accessible across all campuses, and a strange new type of sound being generated and promoted en masse coming out of Laurel Canyon was something that David Gosselin exposed quite elegantly in the course of going through that film, The Devil at Woodstock. So, there's been a theme of aesthetics of cultural warfare, thus we shouldn't be too surprised to find that tonight we're going to do it again, except this night, the issue will be fashion. And it's not something I had developed a proper appreciation for, and I think I'm still learning. But in encountering at a recent GART conference, a young man named Adrian Polushevsky, and we were talking, and Adrian is somebody who I think some people here watching are familiar with as one of the key designers, the creative mastermind behind many of the productions of Rise Attire. I was happy to discover that Adrian is also a filmmaker. And when I was introduced to one of his newest films, it's a two-part series. We're going to watch part one tonight. I was blown away by what he was doing, and especially the question of how he used the entry point of fashion and the battle lines over fashion. Why do we have such absurd freak shows on the runway, on the catwalk these days, when not that long ago you could still see and appreciate certain elegant designs that were not just a satanic, demon-infested, bloody clown show? You actually had some seriousness, some taste. What happened? And so his productions have really opened up new vistas and horizons in my appreciation for this domain. So he's going to be my guest a little bit later on tonight after we watch episode 1 of his series. Episode 2 is still behind a paywall. There will be also a surprise for people who do want to watch episode 2. Adrian has arranged to have certain discounts for those who are watching tonight. So keep your eyes peeled for those discounts and for the service that Adrian will provide you for that. Now, before we do anything, like always, I'm going to read a couple of... Not I'm going to read, actually. Today, we have 3 ads, and they're all completely produced already, so I don't have to do much work. I'm just going to click play, and we're going to listen to 3 ads, and then we're going to watch the movie. So, first up, before anything else, the first ad on the list is Rise Attire. It's very appropriate since we have Adrian of Rise Attire who will be speaking with us today. So, here we go.
What is the Sovereign Alliance? The Sovereign Alliance are a collection of leaders and countries that are aligned not in the vision for their countries, but against a vision that has been thrust upon them. I believe that the Sovereign Alliance is less a battle for something and more a battle against something. They are against globalism, collectivism. They are against the rules-based international order.
Sovereign Alliance, the latest addition to Badlands Rise merch, available now at badlandsmedia.tv/rise.
All right. That was Rise Tide. Now we're going to listen to a quick one from Manly Cans, followed by a soft disclosure lotion ad. So Manly Cans coming up here.
All right, we've had enough. For centuries, men have been discriminated against, overlooked, and just downright forgotten. On Valentine's Day, men have bought chocolate, flowers, cards, and presents for the lady in their life, while men have got neglected. Never fear, ladies. This Valentine's, show the man you love you haven't forgotten him with a gift from Manly Cans. Manly Cans are gift cans for men, featuring local products and reusable packaging, with nationwide shipping and local delivery. Give that special man in your life the perfect Valentine's gift from manlycans.com.
You know, I'm shocked that after all my years, I have never encountered anyone who has made a serious effort to make Valentine's Day accessible for the man. This is kind of revolutionary now that I've seen that ad for the first time. That's what a brilliant, obvious idea. Huh. Make a man-friendly Valentine's Day. Wow. Okay, that's revolutionary stuff here, guys. So, okay, let's do one more ad and then we'll watch a movie. So, what we have here is soft disclosure coming up.
I don't say this lightly. This lotion changes people.
My knuckles would actually start to crack. Started using the soft disclosure lotion, and I am very impressed. Even within just a few days, I've noticed a tremendous difference.
That's not a script. That's what happens when something actually works.
It puts the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
Yeah, that line keeps coming up. Because when you don't use it, your skin starts acting up.
Every single ingredient in soft disclosure is intentionally chosen. There's no filler ingredients. It is not like this BS product where they have a bunch of ingredients. Every ingredient listed is for a purpose.
Over 60 5-star reviews for the lotion alone. Not influencers, not actors, just people whose skin finally shut up. Soft disclosure lotion. Once you try it, you'll understand why people won't stop talking about it. Visit softdisclosure.com and use code BADLANDS and get 10% off.
All right, cool. So I think everyone has used their patience well, and I hope that you've got a few products along the way for Valentine's Day and beyond. But now, sit back, get your popcorns. Think about also some questions for Adrian. If you have any, I'm going to keep my eyes peeled on the chat. So if anybody has any questions about or thoughts to share with Adrian or myself after this film is done, keep it in mind and then write it down, and I'll throw it at Adrian. The name of today's film is Darkness by Design Part 1. And this is something which people can access on dauntlessdialogue.com, the main website, which features many of these documentaries that Adrian and his friends have done. So let us now see. Oh, and by the way, we're going to stream this. I have had technical issues in the past. If people find choppiness, please help me out and write down if you have issues or if it's going smoothly. I hope it goes smoothly because I only have one backup plan if this doesn't work. So here we go.
This is a week and a half and nobody seems to care that there's little kids involved in this. I can't speak what it's like to be a black man, right? I can't speak what it's like to be a Jewish woman, but I can speak what it's like to be a father of 2 young boys. And that this type of behavior, when I worked at CBS.com out of a little closet my first show, I was like, I'm going to say this and wear a blue shirt. I got 49 emails saying, maybe wear a purple shirt and maybe don't say this here. Don't tell me this slipped through the cracks when you're getting a court case that features child pornography. It's disgusting. It's disturbing.
Thank you for that passionate speech. I feel the same way. In fact, your wife's the one that brought this whole disgusting campaign to, I don't even want to call it campaign, let's call it criminal. It's, in my opinion, I don't know if they're going to face criminal, any sort of charges, but they should.
In late November of 2022, the luxury fashion brand Balenciaga released what would become two of the most controversial ad campaigns in the history of the fashion industry. The ads eerily featured toddlers amidst an array of Balenciaga accessories, BDSM teddy bears, pedophilic Easter eggs, and subtle nods to old pagan gods, all of which served to heighten the already growing curiosity regarding degeneracy and occultism in high places. The campaigns drew outrage in the post-Epstein era and came on the heels of loosely related cultural phenomena like Pizzagate, spirit cooking, satanic Nikes, the Wayfair controversy, and the general affinity for spiritual darkness in Hollywood. The sensationalism would eventually wear off, leaving people with the feeling that they had caught a glimpse of something important, but were left with more questions than answers. What was really going on here? Are there deeper implications, or was this truly just the result of poor creative decision-making, as implied by the brand's creative director? No, there had to be. The real question for most of us became, how bad is it? How had Balenciaga, historically one of the most tasteful, refined, and widely respected names in couture, come to this? Balenciaga's origin story is a classic rags to riches tale. The brand's founder, Cristóbal Balenciaga, was born in a small town called Hetaria in the Basque region of Spain in 1895. He began his career working as a tailor's apprentice at the age of 12, and as a teenager, his work caught the eye of the Marquesa de Casa Torres, a local noblewoman who would become his primary patron, eventually sending him to Madrid, where he'd be formally trained as a tailor. By the time Cristóbal turned 24, he'd already acquired an impressive clientele base, was widely held as a prodigy, and had established his own couture boutique in San Sebastian. His clientele at the time was mostly Spanish aristocracy, and even members of his royal family. The Spanish Civil War would eventually force him to relocate to Paris, where he would establish the very first boutique with the now iconic branding, Balenciaga. It was at this time that the designer fashion industry was really reaching a new zenith, with many of the names we recognize today coming into prominence, such as Parisian brands like Dior, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, and the much older Hermes, as well as Italian brands like Gucci, Prada, and Fendi. But Balenciaga was particularly revered and admired, even among his competitors. The legendary French designer Christian Dior said this of his rival:
Haute couture is like an orchestra, for which Balenciaga is the conductor. The rest of us are just musicians following the directions he gives us.
Coco Chanel, another iconic founder, shared similar admiration, saying,
"The only true couturier amongst us, able to design, cut, assemble, and sew a dress entirely by himself."
At the height of his career, Cristóbal was widely seen as a true master of his craft. He inspired up-and-coming designers like Oscar de la Renta and Hubert de Givenchy, boasted clientele such as Mona von Bismarck, Gloria Guinness, Grace Kelly, Ava Gardner, Audrey Hepburn, and Jackie Kennedy. He'd even designed the dress worn by Queen Fabiola of the Belgians to her royal wedding in 1960. Cristóbal would retire from the world of high fashion in 1968 at the age of 74, and to the surprise of many, he made the decision to end the brand along with his career, stating that
high fashion is mortally wounded.
Cristóbal was not impressed with the direction that high fashion had been taking. In his mind, if he was done designing, then there was no reason that the brand should continue. A common theme with big designer brands like Armani, Prada, and Chanel is the reverence they display for their founders. They take great pride in the fact that they're family-owned. often boasting storied histories of each brand's rise to prominence. So how is it that Balenciaga, with Cristóbal having no heir nor desire to see the house live on, continues to dominate high fashion today? Is it possible that their claim to the original house, founded in 1917, is a fictional story? Following his death in 1972, the rights to his brand name would be sold against his stated will by an estranged nephew to the German chemical manufacturer Hoechst AG, one of the co-founders of IG Farben, a lingering relic of Hitler's war machine known for supplying Zyklon B, the cyanide-based pesticide said to have been used at Auschwitz. The reason for Hoechst's acquisition of the brand was to continue its popular perfume line. The rights would be sold again in 1986 to another chemical company before finally being picked up in 2001 by Kering, a multinational corporation specializing in luxury brands. When Cristóbal died, Balenciaga was laid to rest as well, but the grave was robbed and the brand reanimated through economic necromancy. It would lumber around for years, passing through the hands of several designers until finally a new spirit came into Balenciaga. Demna Gvasalia. Cristóbal Balenciaga, while never one to shy away from the unconventional, maintained a very distinct style and taste. Even his most daring designs were marked by a signature elegance. The Balenciaga of today, that is, the Balenciaga under Demna Gvasalia, seems to be intent on doing the opposite. Demna's signature style, which he imported from his own label, Vêtements, brought a much darker aesthetic to the brand, making it almost unrecognizable in comparison to the brand's alleged roots in elegant couture. To better understand this edgy new motif, there is hardly a more perfect encapsulation than the runway show for Balenciaga's Summer 2023 collection. The runway was a pool of mud, the mood was ominous, the music was anxiety-inducing. The BDSM handbags were on full display. Models lurked the runway awkwardly, brandishing bruised faces and the look of fear that you would see in abuse victims, some looking almost possessed. Several of the male models walked with a lifelike baby doll strapped to their chests, draped in dirty black trench coats, caged teddy bears in hand. But these disturbing themes went far beyond just a soiled facade, as evidenced in this rare behind-the-scenes clip. Upon request, an uncomfortable male model opens up his bag to show us what's inside, revealing a blanket, teddy bear, and pacifier spattered in fake blood. As disconcerting as this all was, there was also a clownishness to it that left many of us wondering, what's this really all about? And had Cristóbal undoubtedly rolling over in his grave. This sinister chic would become the norm at Balenciaga, the brand's whole vibe now steeped in a very bleak, modern darkness. A darkness that would culminate into two of the most controversial ad campaigns in the history of fashion. Art is often provocative and edgy. The activist and street artist Banksy popularized a quote by Mexican poet and academic Cesar A. Cruz, who famously wrote,
"Art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable."
To the painter, there are no forbidden colors. No hue is considered sufficiently distasteful that it is discarded completely. For the truly creative, whether their medium is the written word, audio, video, or applied art, the concept of spiritual darkness is a very real force in this world. One that can serve the artist in delivering a truth, moral, or statement. But where does one draw the line between artistry and darkness for the sake of darkness? Or perhaps for the sake of something worse? How can we differentiate between pushing boundaries and genuine malintent? It's like the question of what constitutes pornography. Sometimes you just know it when you see it. The now infamous Balenciaga gift shop ad for their Christmas 2022 collection featured multiple toddlers posing next to plush teddy bears adorned with BDSM gear and seemingly swollen, bruised eyes, surrounded by an array of adult accessories. Wine glasses, beer cans, flasks, black vinyl tape used for bondage, chains from bags laid out in the shape of two. Well, judge for yourself. Ski masks, a child's drawing of a burning home and demonic imagery, white rabbit symbolism, a heart-shaped doggy bed, a dog leash, a dog bowl that looks like a spiked collar, kids with sad or scared looks on their faces from models, some laying down as if drunk or drugged. All of this together painted a disturbing picture, one that was seemingly attempting to glamorize child abuse, but it didn't stop there. The other ad, this one showcasing the Spring-Summer 2023 collections, wasn't offensive at first glance, like the previous campaign. It was a mostly innocuous office shoot, showcasing a new collaboration between Balenciaga and Adidas. However, in one image, an hourglass handbag is placed on top of a pile of paper strewn across an office desk. Anonymous internet sleuths enhanced the image to get a closer look at the papers and discovered one of the documents was the text from a U.S. Supreme Court case, U.S. v. Williams, which criminalized child pornography. The portion shown in the picture cites another Supreme Court case, Ashcroft v. Free Speech Coalition, which made virtual child porn protected speech. Another picture in the collection featured Isabelle Huppert sitting in front of a stack of books, including one celebrating Michael Boremans, a Belgian painter whose work is known to include depictions of castrated toddlers. Beneath it was another book called The Cremaster Cycle, featuring the film and performance art of Matthew Barney, which is just as disturbing, if not more so. His work features running themes of cannibalism and abortion, set against the backdrop of a demonic, dystopian-style futurism. Together, these campaigns would immediately spur a wave of scrutiny, bordering on righteous indignation.
Wear this bullshit. Don't come around my kids ever again. I'm not giving this shit away. I'm burning everything. Because if you wear this, you represent pedophilia. I don't fuck with it. So I'm the biggest Balenciaga fan. But these gotta go. Canceled.
As a new TikTok trend emerged of people burning their Balenciaga merchandise, Karen would report that sales took a hit in the US and UK. From the most fringe conspiracy theorists to milquetoast normies who accused the brand of sexualizing children. Balenciaga responded with the wiping of all their social media, followed by a very public blame game with execs blaming creatives, creatives blaming execs, and the general public blaming everyone involved. The fashion house's response to the scandal was put under the microscope by fashion magazines, marketers, and crisis management firms the world over. The general consensus being that nobody was buying what the Balenciaga execs were selling. Demna would break his silence in early December, issuing a statement of his own. But others in the industry didn't believe that Demna should be off the hook. Zara Innocent, the executive creative director at House 337, opined that
there are Months of planning and ironing out every detail of an idea between the brand, the production team, and photographer. On the day, there are big teams and people running around all over the place. It can feel chaotic and things can slip through the net. However, the brand's creative director rules the roost. If they're doing their jobs, they scrutinize every detail of a shot and make the final call on when they've got it right to move on.
Regarding Demna's involvement, Innocent said,
"It doesn't matter if he was on the shoot or not. He would have signed the campaign off before it was released."
As with all controversies, the ad scandal would eventually disappear from headlines, with the debacle being labeled in the news as poor marketing. But the public wasn't willing to accept the verdict. The media may have lost interest in the story, but the internet was just getting started. Soon, everyone involved with the brand, even those only tangentially involved with Demna, would be scrutinized by the autists and armchair investigators of the World Wide Web. Demna is known for the company he keeps, being a major collaborator with Kim Kardashian and Kanye West. But he also keeps close industry friends like model and stylist Lada Volkova, who worked as the lead stylist for Vetements and Balenciaga, and Mintu Vasala, one of the brand's premier runway models. When the scandal first broke, it was his association with Volkova and their tendency for occult and generally uncomfortable imagery that led people to assume their involvement in the satanic underground. Volkova's Instagram, which featured a bevy of images ranging from the weird to the sinister, would be flooded with accusatory comments. It didn't help that both Demna and Volkova are close with Gosha Rubchinsky. A Russian streetwear designer who was accused of pressuring a 16-year-old boy to send explicit images of himself. Regarding these accomplices, Demna once wrote in an Instagram post that
someone wrote that Lotte, Gosha, and I grew up on child pornography and radiation from Chernobyl, which is why we're so f***ed up.
Beyond the sexualization of children, Balenciaga appears to have an interest in both the arcane arts and the impending technocratic dystopia as well. In 2021, while the world was forced to isolate themselves indoors during the COVID-19 pandemic, Balenciaga released their Fall 2021 collection inside a 3D web-based video game using the Unreal Engine, a project called Afterworld, The Age of Tomorrow. The game sees players traverse several zones within what looks like a smart city wonderland set in the not-too-distant future, where a white rabbit eventually leads the player to a secret rave in the woods. The surroundings are bleak, the mood is eerie, and peppered throughout are subtle symbols, including the white rabbit of Alice in Wonderland and MKUltra lore, as well as a decapitated man placed inside a labyrinth. This symbol is of particular interest, as it is the symbol associated with Acephaly, which was both a publication and a secret society created by the French philosopher Jorge Bataille. Both the cult and the publication were established in France in the late 1930s. The image was an occult take on Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, a symbol meant to depict classical reason. With the head notably removed, a skull placed in the groin region, a burning heart in its right hand, while wielding a dagger in its left. Bataille considered Acephaly an anti-religion, a religion unto itself. They make it clear in their work that this symbol of the decapitated man is meant to represent the death of God and reason. The public review included poetry, essays, and arts, all dealing heavily in philosophy, esotericism, Nietzsche, and opposing fascism, Nazism, Christianity, and even democracy. The secret society by the same name was not simply another reading and discussion group, but a genuine occult society that was known to conduct torch-lit rituals in a forest which were believed to have included human sacrifice. In the same way Balenciaga loves to portray a bleak dystopian future through their work, so too did Batale and the cult of Cephaly. In 1947, they published Encyclopedia de Costa, meant to coincide with the International Surrealist Exhibition in Paris. Most notable in it was an entry about a future they foresaw where a license to live was required to be on your person at all times, with the failure to keep yours in order being death. Cephaly set forth a stated mission of war on God, conventional beauty and societal norms, in a very literal way. They saw the potential for use of modern art and culture in this dark agenda, and claimed to have successfully infiltrated the Surrealist movement for that purpose. They also boasted of their cult's membership of high society figures in the fields of science, philosophy, and psychiatry. They intellectualized themselves into a pretzel to justify what amounts to pure degeneracy and evil, awarding themselves full ethical license to do what they will in their religious pursuit of holy war against God. Demna's fascination with the Cephaly's dark legacy and Batale's teachings, and his deliberate choice to include a poster brandishing the cult's name in Afterworld, speaks volumes about his philosophy. It actually allows us to make better sense of the brand's otherwise outrageous creative direction decisions. Though the scandal fell from relevance, things felt unresolved, like there was something still lurking behind it all. Were these campaigns merely the result of poor decision-making, or did the world collectively bear witness to a brief glimpse of a concealed malevolence? There are too many variables pointing in the direction of intention to ignore. From the inclusion of children in the shoot, the Supreme Court ruling, the Michael Borman's book, and especially the altering of the brand's name to incorporate a Canaanite Phoenician god associated with child sacrifice. When all of these things are factored together, it's hard to believe that this was all an honest mistake. But does the buck stop with Demna and company? Or could it be that the true evil here runs much deeper than a mere photographer, stylist, and creative director? The fact remains that despite assurances to the contrary, Balenciaga's execs likely signed off on every aspect of these shoots. But does it end with Balenciaga? How far up the chain does the cultural rot go? Are the masses simply paranoid? Or is this spiritual darkness something that's endemic in the designer fashion industry and high society in general? Perhaps a deeper dive into the industry as a whole is merited to truly understand the scope of this evil and what we can do about it.
All right. That was a wild ride, and I really, really appreciated that, having watched that now 3 times, and having also watched episode 2. And this is the first time I've seen episode 1 after watching episode 2, and a lot more is just snapping together, and I appreciate that even more so. I'm really looking forward now to introducing now our guest, Adrian Polushevsky.
Hey, how are you, Matt? No, you had it right, man. Polushevsky. It's phonetic, and you nailed it.
That was a piece of art, my friend. I really, if I had a hat, I would take it off right now. You did a great job. Thank you very much for doing this, man. And thank you for joining me tonight to chat with me as well as the audience. I'm going to keep my eyes peeled, like I said, to the chats, which I'm very bad at, but I'm going to try.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for screening the film. It's really an honor, and I'm really appreciative that you'd share your audience with us, myself, and I'm speaking on behalf of Adam Riva as well at Dauntless Dialogue, who is the benefactor of these films. He's the one, funding them, making them happen, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm a big fan of his work as well. So joining the Dauntless team and contributing my talents to, for the info war through the Dauntless platform has been a great creative outlet for me. And I'm glad that you see it as a work of art. To me, that means a lot. If I'm going to be dealing in this kind of information, the least I can do is make it artful and something that can be appreciated, even if it's a kind of a dark art, or it's got darkness to it, obviously. But in the second one, especially, I really aimed to balance that out and get down to what I think is the solution, which is happening in a lot of ways organically. And yeah, that's so cool that you were saying that this is your first time watching it after having watched part 2, because I do think that that's important. I almost wish I could just play part 2 for your audience, but the questions that I asked at the very end of part 1 that were, who's responsible for this and why, and what can we do about it? I really sought to answer those questions and, go as far up the ladder as I could get. And in fact, all these things happened with the whole Balenciaga scandal and with their parent company after this part 1 was released, that like no one in the States knows about. So I was tracking all that stuff really closely. And, I don't know if you know this or not, but the one whistleblower who we talk a lot about in part 2, who's an important key figure to understanding what this is all really about, that there's like actually an intelligence angle to all this. And that's in a lot of ways what this is for, at least it's being weaponized for intelligence agencies, without giving too much away. But the whistleblower in part 2 is actually someone I was able to get in touch with and who worked with me on part 2.
That's incredible, man. No, let me ask you this before we go into, and I noticed that you sent me the trailer as a teaser for part 2. So before our conversation's out, we're going to play that trailer as well to like whet people's appetites even more if it's not already, if the fires are not already lit. This will I hope push them over the edge to just like make the leap and watch part 2. But what made you like? Were you already quite passionate about the question of creativity, morality, aesthetics, and fashion before you encountered this whole satanic takeover of this like over the top Balenciaga controversy? And I mean, it was already getting ugly before that. It was already I remember that there was already I was in university 20 years ago in illustration, and we were already making fun of the wackiness of a lot of the what should have been haute couture, but there was wacky, but it wasn't satanic. It was just weird,
just avant-garde, right?
Yeah, avant-garde, pushing the limits of like, good taste. But again,
and that's fine. I'm not a prude. Like, I don't have a problem with avant-garde stuff. Like, I get it. There's a place for that in society. You know what I mean? Like, surrealism is something that I grew up really loving. Like, I love Dali paintings and Magritte. Magritte was a huge inspiration on me for a while.
This is not an apple, right? It's a ce n'est pas une pomme.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yep. With the apple in front of the face, and he did some really cool stuff. But it was definitely all considered surrealism, and it came out around that same time, and he came out of Paris. But a lot of this stuff is centered in Paris. To answer your question, it's been a lifelong sort of boiling of the frog. Like just watching this slow boil happen with culture, and fashion is just one angle of it. But the satanic infiltration has been showing itself gradually in all these different forms in everything. Since I was a kid, I was noticing it, and I was noticing it, maybe not fully understanding it at first, but knowing that there was something going on, that there was something more to it, that there had to be, because I was just, one thing I've always been good at, which made me a good musician and made me a good artist and producer, was my pattern recognition abilities. And, just getting kind of granular and being able to pick up on patterns that are sort of subtle and subconscious at times. And when I was younger, it would start as like just this sort of like inkling that something was going on, you know, and it was really confirmed for me when I went to college right out of high school, and I studied communications and broadcasting, telecommunications, and mass media. And I was learning about like the different conglomerates in the mass media industry, and learning about all the ways that like the FCC was, you know, bending their rules to allow mergers to happen that were basically conglomerized, you know, like creating these conglomerates that were just owning these massive percentages of media that were in conflicts of interest with each other. And then when you look at like the different companies that were owned, and you could start to see that like there was this orchestrated kind of deliberate degeneration of the quality of the content. It seemed like, you know, first, whether it was like the decision to steer away from music on MTV, or if it was like, you know, the incorporation of reality TV and everything. And it was like, why are they doing this?
Isn't that kind of like a demoralizing relief in some way? Like, it's a weird feeling, because on the one hand, it's demoralizing when you're first learning about the centralization and control behind the scenes of what you thought was like a free world that you were born into. And you're like, oh, that's crappy. That's a worse situation than I imagined. But then it's kind of moralizing in a certain sense, because if you don't know about this increased organizational conspiratorial aspect of our lives and the degeneration of our tastes and morality, it would appear as though human beings are terrible. Like, it would appear that decay is the natural order, and the natural evolution and flow of life is just things getting worse and more mediocre. But then you're like, oh, wait a minute. It seems like a lot of work is being put into artificially making things this bad.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, maybe it's not us. Maybe humanity is pretty good at the end of the day.
Well, that's how they operate, right? I mean, same thing with like climate change, you know, that like they want us to just blame all this horrific stuff that they're rubbing in our face, or in some ways like, you know, manifesting and sort of blame it on us and get us to think that we're responsible and to hate ourselves for it. Or, you know, that's the name of their game, you know, so that it's to me, it just made perfect sense. I'm like, of course, you know, and it made me feel empowered, because I felt like I could get my mind around it, and I can understand it better, and I can attack it, you know. And I've always felt, you know, that desire to have sort of like an anti-establishment spirit within me, you know, that I've never had a problem with like standing up and asking the one question in class that everyone's thinking but doesn't have the balls to ask. You know what I mean?
You're that kid.
Yeah, I was that kid for sure. And, you know, every time like, I raise my hand once in a while, you know, but what I did, like everyone would turn around because I asked some wild shit. And then the teacher was like, oh my God, you know, but, so I've always been trying to figure out ways to come at this fight and address this situation and make it more obvious and bring it out. And, you know, this started for me with music, you know, that was my main thing. And, you know, I had to, you know, I was always sort of addressing these issues about like centralized control, the real sort of truths behind power structures and stuff, but in very, very subtle ways. And, just eventually just going into white pills and just trying to like white pill people. But once like 2020 hit and all the music stuff got shut down for me with COVID, I'd been doing work for a t-shirt brand, a streetwear brand called Shirt Was Cash. And, you know, I was the creative director for Shirt Was Cash. And, because of that, I was able to get all different kinds of, you know, some important connections with like manufacturing and stuff. So I just ended up going, I came up with the idea for Rise Attire. And it was about that time that I got involved with the truth movement, like full time. And I just dedicated myself to it and figured out ways to, you know, fight back in the cultural sphere in ways that I felt were just completely dominated by the cabal for the longest time. And one of those areas is culture and fashion and stuff like that. I mean, I wouldn't call Rise of Tyre a fashion brand, you know, not in the same way Balenciaga is, but it's definitely like, you know, it's like a Supreme kind of equivalent, or like some kind of like streetwear brand equivalent. It's not, I mean, all those brands are completely dominated by satanic imagery now and occult symbolism everywhere. It's because it's all the same.
So let me ask you this, and I thank you for that background. Actually, one more question on background, then something on the realm of ideas a little bit more directly. But is this your first foray into filmmaking, branching out of your work in fashion and streetwear and graphic design? Is this, or had you already been experimenting and exploring in the realm of multimedia cinema and things like that before this series has come out?
Yeah. So, well, I've always been a fan of film, and you know, I used to just go to the Ritz and just watch a random movie on the weekend, like, you know, not knowing anything about it, just watch indie films all the time. It was sort of a, you know, one of the art forms of art that I always really loved. So that's where I sort of developed a sense for that sort of thing. You know, I'm not formally trained, but I started working in multimedia and digital design, graphic design, when I was like in junior high school. And then I was doing video production stuff in college for fun. But, you know, as I developed as a music producer, I began doing my own promotional videos and making my own music videos. And some of those, I had to like really figure out some complex stuff, because I was coming up with ideas that before AI, you know, would be like, I'd have to like, for instance, like I came up with this idea for a music video that I was going to create different moments that the singer who I collaborated with on this track, that she was caught in for an eternity in the afterlife. And they were like based on actual like Magritte paintings and like different kinds of like surrealist paintings that I loved. So I was creating, like we shot them on location and used actual like physical props, and we're like suspending physical props, and I had to like figure out how to use After Effects, and I taught myself After Effects by banging my head against the wall for hours and hours, you know, learning the hard way. But like, it's the best way to learn, honestly. So it was mainly out of necessity, because I couldn't afford to pay someone $50,000, $100,000 to do what I wanted to do. So I did it myself. And that was my introduction to video production. But this was my first actual film. So I hadn't attempted like a documentary film at this length. Up until then, I had done some like very short form things for Rise of Tyre that were like little red pills and like cool, you know, promotional videos. Like I do all our ads, and if you guys in your audience have ever seen the Rise of Tyre ads, you know, they're pretty cool. And they're like different like mini expressions of this thing that I'm exploring in a broader sense with these films. But yeah, so it started for promotional purposes and for like just getting quick mimetic ideas across. But this was my first actual film, and I'm proud to say I won my first award for this film, which is right. It's actually right here.
What was the festival that you found yourself in?
It was the 1A Film Festival, which is
that's cool.
This camera, yeah.
That's a great award, man.
Thank you. Yeah, and that was in Greenville, Texas. So I went there with Adam Riva over the summer, and they screened the film, and it was great.
Wow, that's fantastic, man. Well, okay, so and what a way to explode onto the scene. I got to say, like for your first full production, that was remarkably good. I just presume that you had already done different iterations of or different small videos, small and large alike, before you did that, but you just did that, so that's just incredible. Okay, on the issue of particular fashion and haute couture per se, what do you think? Why do you think they feel the need to take something which I would say your average Joe citizen doesn't really place too much high regard on the domain of haute couture fashion and you know, things like that? It's kind of on the fringes of what you'd think is popular taste, but the oligarchy does. The oligarchy places very high value on controlling the borderlands, the fringes, the outskirts. And what do you think is their reason for placing such value in that realm?
I think one of the primary things has to do with like the celebrity influencers that they recruit and are able to get to wear their products. So, for instance, like people like what's her name, Kanye's wife, Kim Kardashian, you know, like was a big Balenciaga endorser, you know, someone who they sponsor and, you know, has been on the runway, as even Kanye was too for a while. But like, you know, I think to them, like, because really you're correct. I mean, most of Balenciaga stuff is well outside the affordability zone for most people. And, you know, but it's a status thing. Like, and it got so outrageous. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but Balenciaga was actually like, you know, selling like sneakers and clothing that was like totally destroyed. Like literally, like it looked like it had been like a bomb, you know, some sort of like picked out of the rubble in like Beirut or something, and selling them for like $2,500 for a pair of shoes, like, you know, just like a total like fu to the average person, and it's like a way for them to like put themselves up on this pedestal, and you know, when you market yourself as a luxury brand, then like you're gonna attract the kind of people who look up to that sort of thing as something that they want to attain, you know, or something that they can admire, and that, you know, then you get these like really kind of shallow elitist types, like Nicole Kidman is a great example. She was a Balenciaga representative. You know, she comes from like, she's like straight up lizard person blood, you know about the Kidman family.
I know that her father is a psychiatrist who had some very serious connections to some very bad things.
He was a politician too in Australia, and they're a very like wealthy family that goes, you know, old money, and they're involved in some very scandalous stuff involving children. And it was no accident that she was chosen for Eyes Wide Shut. Let's just say that.
Yeah, you know, and the movies that she finds herself in and the shows that she finds herself in, because she's kind of everywhere, you know, and they all have an occulty kind of dark undertone of social engineering. Like there's no simple entertainment that this woman finds herself in, whether it's Nine Perfect Strangers, which is like, you know, an MK Ultra type psyop to get people on psychedelic drugs to break down and rebuild themselves in some weird, or whatever it is, or American horror show.
American Horror Story.
American Horror Story. Yeah, it smells like she's a witch. Like, I mean,
She is.
She's okay. All right.
She is. I mean, maybe you don't feel comfortable going out on a limb and saying that. That's fine. I'll say it. I don't care. You know, she's totally a witch, and she might deny it, but I guarantee you, I would bet my life savings on it.
Yeah, I would bet you're right as well. So yeah, that's the thing. I guess it's influencing the influencers, and that's the real power. Is they don't really care so much about the masses per se, but they do care about those who shape the flavor or the beat frequencies that the masses will tune themselves to, that's a higher value. You can get one of these trophies to be molded and sculpted according to some satanic agenda, and all of a sudden you're going to control by default or influence in a massive way millions of dumbed down admiring, you know, fans who are going to emulate the emulator
and make a few $100 million while you're at it, you know, a couple $100 million, you know, especially with when you consider the profit margins of selling destroyed secondhand sneakers for $2,500, you know what I mean? Or like an IKEA bag for like $5,000. Like that's what they're doing. They're just selling the worst junk. And even their you know, their finer things are all like made in sweatshops, and it's not just Balenciaga. This goes for almost all quote unquote high fashion brands. And you know, what I found digging into this sort of world even further for part 2 was that they're all owned by the same parent company. There's really just two parent companies. It's just like the media companies, you know. And when you look at the people running these parent companies, they're the most powerful people in the world, and they're absolutely operating with an agenda. And the agenda is to degrade society, to normalize pedophilia.
Yeah.
For a few different reasons. One of the main reasons that is just kind of very simple is that if you can get a society to accept pedophilia, and accepting pedophilia doesn't necessarily even have to mean like being a pedophile. It's just like not being outraged by it, you know, accepting it, not standing up and saying this is absolutely unacceptable and burning everything that you have that's made by this brand because of it, the way people did with Balenciaga. And I think I wanted to really do that justice in this film, is to show that kind of outrage that came from those ads that was absolutely justified, and you know, it still continues to this day. You know, some people still will never wear Balenciaga again, and they really hurt their reputation. And their parent company, Kering, has been just bleeding billions of dollars since.
Yeah.
And you know, but nevertheless, they persist, and their agenda.
Revealing, eh? That's very revealing. That it, because everyone says money makes the world go round. It's all about the money, and it's like, well, actually, no, no, they're willing to lose billions of dollars because there's something they value more than the money.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's
and to finish that thought, if you can get a society to accept pedophilia, or the normalization of child abuse, let's say, or the glamorization of child abuse, even somehow, you know, as if those two things could even exist in the same sentence prior to this ad scandal. But then you can get them to accept anything. Then they'll accept anything, and it's all over, really.
Yeah. And it's scary because I've had debates with people on the question of things like Balenciaga, things like child abuse, pedophilia, Pizzagate stuff, and I've had normies who are not necessarily bad people in the conventional sense of the word defending things that are pedophilia if it's within the context of art, child abuse if it's in the context of art, and it's like they would never do it, but they would defend it. And a growing amount of people who are conditioned by the tastes of our university systems and these other brainwashing mechanisms come out saying things like that. And so, like you said, it ends up becoming a society that is not fit to self-govern. It's not fit to judge right and wrong. And that's perfect if you're a feudal slave, you know, or if you're a feudalist wanting a slave master society of obedient serfs who will defend their shackles. That's the perfect kind of instincts you want people to have, who will just stand up and defend these things academically or whatever.
Not to mention if you're a pedophile.
As well, right?
Which most of these people are. So, you know, it's like it's you know, works in multiple ways for them, you know.
Yeah.
So they can get away with their crimes a lot easier if society's not outraged by them, right? And when you look at France, this is a serious problem, you know, especially these European countries, France, Belgium, Sweden, you know, the Netherlands. Like, these are all countries that are just wrought with pedophilia in the upper echelon of society, and especially government. It's almost like the name of the game, you know. When you look at the pedophile networks that have been busted in Belgium, and you look at like the way that the French establishment protected people like Gabriel Matzneff, who I talk about in part 2. Do you want to play the trailer for part 2?
Yeah, sure I do. Okay, let's do it. Well,
that way, if we're referencing it, people have a better idea of what we're talking about.
That's not a bad idea. Okay, and keep in mind. Well, I'll let you bring up the special that you've announced that you've you've arranged for people who want to watch part 2 tonight or anytime, or maybe starting tomorrow night. So here's part 2. Oh, wait a minute, I'm doing something wrong here.
Feels like it might be a lot of that in order to control. They want to monetize and traumatize.
Unfortunately, we're in the late stage of an era where the grotesque has been propped up as beautiful, and debauchery and apathy are encouraged and celebrated.
Hold on, I'm going to just play that from the beginning because I think I was screwing things up. 1 second.
Feels like it might be a lot of that in order to control. They want to monetize and traumatize.
Unfortunately, we're in the late stage of an era where the grotesque has been propped up as beautiful, and debauchery and apathy are encouraged and celebrated. Behind it all is a creeping ideology that spread its influence in the mass mind. It is self-organizing, seeks positions of power, and makes its home at the nexus where industry, finance, art, entertainment, and even fashion converge. It is by every measure dangerous and subversive, with palpable real-life consequences that can be measured not just in cultural degradation, but in blood. There is hope, however, because as the casualties of these consequences continue to pile up, those who've been lulled to sleep by their spell are forced to wake and confront it. Now, in 2025, we find ourselves on the verge of an inflection point, helped along by the efforts of those in the info war. But in order to truly heal and evolve, important questions must continue to be answered. Like, who is responsible for this? And why?
It's up for all of them. It don't matter if you Diddy or whoever you is. All lies will be exposed. That's all.
Shout out Cat Williams. I love that Cat Williams clip.
What was the name in that second film? And I'm just forgetting her name. This sorceress witch, French woman.
Michelle Lamy.
Michelle Lamy. What a I didn't.
Michelle Lamy.
Yeah, I didn't think anybody could go beyond Marina Abramovich as far as just the depths of the influential Satanists in this realm. But there we are. You introduced. Could you say a bit more about how did you encounter Michelle Lamy? Because I didn't even know. I think of myself as a pretty informed person. I didn't realize that the level of influence. I knew of this freak show that I've seen in a few pictures here and there, but how did you come onto her? I don't want to use this.
I just randomly heard about her.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who's also a hardcore conspiracy theorist and a rapper, who I work with, we send him clothes and stuff, and he reps Rise. But I saw a post that he made, and it was just a picture of her, and he was talking about how she's like a head witch in Hollywood. And when I first saw her photo, I was like, whoa, I just got this like feeling that came over me, this like dark feeling, like, holy shit, who is this lady? And I just started digging into her, and the more I dug into her, the more I realized that like she's really flying under the radar in a lot of ways. Like, so many people don't know about her. Everyone knows about Marina Abramovic, and that's good. That's a good thing. People need to know about these people. They need to be pariahs, make shame great again, as far as I'm concerned. Like, I think they're the best way that we can fight against these kinds of people are just socially. That's the kind of like I don't know the right word for it, but like that's how like we can actually like bring the fight to the streets, is just make the social incentives disincentivize them in that respect, and lean on these companies that are like, with Microsoft, they were like collaborating with Marina, and we were able to shut that down. Like, they literally had to like abandon working with her because of how much they got attacked and how downvoted the campaign got. So that's great, because these people, they're out here like really trying to destroy society through everything that they touch. That's their art, is destruction.
Well, it's the art of decay. Yeah, they actually, that's their church, is the church of entropy. It's the church of decay. It's the church of death. And they really do value that in a sacred way. Like, this merging of the sacred and the profane seems to be really big in all of their rituals, whether, no matter where but what I like about what you do so much, and what's so unique, is that you're introducing always the question of light. So you never introduce darkness if you don't have a brighter light to already set the tone, whether it's starting with a longer scope. Like, we know that, especially amongst the conspiracy communities, there's no shortage of exposures of Satanism and pedophilia networks and things like that. There's a lot of people who talk about those things, but I found it was the first time that I've actually seen in a very long time anybody who actually really genuinely took a historic, like a step back from the topic and introduced the beauty of what civilized fashion once was. What is the artistry of good taste that once was more normalized? It maybe still had problems, but it was much more normalized. And then you had a contrast of normalcy, of goodness, of beauty, around which you could then appreciate this abnormality that we're currently living in. And then you also introduced within that historic understanding of beauty of the past that we've fallen away from, that there's also bursts of effort right now to revive and recover that classical sensibility and the divine and in like the proper femininity that people should be appreciating within clothing and styles. I don't know if you could say anything about like what brought you into that, what gave you
sure.
that, and also like what are some examples today of like some lines and some nations of the world that might be better at that than, let's say, France.
Well, first of all, that's a really amazing compliment, and I hold that a very high regard. Thank you. To me, like I don't want to delve into this kind of information without there being a light at the end of the tunnel, for there to be a reason to fight. You know, like we need to feel encouraged in order to actually take up the sword, you know, and there needs to be something worth fighting for. It can't just all be lost already, you know, and the more you frame these people as like infinitely powerful or like, you know, totally like just some kind of force that resistance is futile against, you know, like the more that actually becomes a reality, you know, our words and how we view things, how, you know, our consciousness has a profound effect on the world around us, and as do our words. So, you know, to me, I'm not out here to black pill people. I'm out here to expose evil and destroy it. And you know, one of the things that they've invested a lot into is trying to get us to forget things that really, in the grand scheme of things, aren't that far removed from us at this point. Like, it's really not that long ago that we had a whole different value set in society, you know, and I see that as almost like a homeostasis that is natural, that they had to work very hard to get us to stray from. And I think they've pushed it so far at this point and so hard that it's actually worked against them. I think it's woken a lot of people up. It's become cheesy. It's become cliche, you know, and because of that, the pendulum has begun to swing back in the direction that it's actually meant to be at, where you have these a more classical definition of beauty that underlines things and underlines, you know, art, and where you can deviate from that, and that's part of the artistic process. You could still agree upon, at least, you know, that there is a certain standard of what would be considered beautiful and what would be considered grotesque, you know, where their goal is to completely flip that, so that like there are no boundaries between right and wrong, good and evil, and ugly and beautiful anymore, and to the point where they see what is ugly as beautiful, and that's the point at which they want us to be. So, you know, to me, I see all kinds of really promising indications that the culture is, you know, swung back in the direction of standard and tradition, and you know, a reverence for femininity, you know, and also there's a very important spiritual component to this as well, that, you know, if we fail to address, then we fail to fight them on the playing field that they're fighting on, you know. This is very much a spiritual battle, and while they try to pretend that they're atheists or that they're sort of like secular, and that they like don't believe in God. They actually do believe in God, and they just are either like working to subvert God's will, or God's creation, or they see Lucifer as the true God, depending on who you talk to, right? But either way, to me, like, one of the most promising things that I see is a certain revival in spirituality and a reverence for God. And, to me, I'm a Christian, and I've come to Christ later in life. I was raised both Christian and Jewish. My mom's Jewish, my dad's Catholic. So I was sort of like exposed to both worlds, but neither in any sort of like serious way, So I always believed in God, but to me, like, and just with my journey, I've come to believe that Jesus is, who he claims to be. And part of the reasons I've arrived there is just coming to know evil so intimately and seeing how evil operates and how much of a disdain and how much of a target Jesus is to them. So not to make this too religious, but I see that there's a revival in like hip hop music, and it's sort of like a natural thing. Like, and I showcase a number of different examples of this in part 2. But when you look at the way that hip hop music and rock, it started with rock music. Well, it actually started with like blues, with like this sort of satanic infiltration, and I think it started in blues and then evolved to like rock and heavy metal. And whereas that was like the Satan's main thing in like the 80s and 90s, it really started transitioning over to the hip hop world in the 2000s, and it's been going strong since. And if you look at like some of these acts, like I used to produce hip hop, so I have a sort of special place in my heart for it. I listen to it, I understand it, and because of that, I'm keeping tabs on these different hip hop artists these young guys who like at this point are just complete overt upside down crosses, pentagrams everywhere, total satanic, like symbolism everywhere, and the kind of stuff that puts Marilyn Manson to shame. The kind of stuff that Marilyn Manson's like looking at these guys like, yo, these guys, these are the next gen. This is next level stuff right here. But it's caused in the same way, things like, it's just the way the universe works. You have in physics, every action has an equal or opposite reaction, right? And I think so it goes with culture. So you have things that a whole movement just organically coming up in response to this stuff because they pushed so hard and they've gone so far beyond the pale that people are just like naturally just disgusted by it and coming to know God through that inversion, Yeah,
no, that's a good point. And like a lot of people have been shaken out of their normism just because, and it's unfortunate, you'd like to think in a healthy society that there's a better way to come to having a relationship with God than through being horrified by the evil that's run amok. You'd think that in a healthy world that you'd probably get there in a more organic way. However, a lot of people have been shaken up, and as you pointed out in your film, burning, like just dumping all of the Balenciaga products. These are like normal folk, not tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists organizing protests outside of the headquarters of not just Balenciaga, but a variety of these different, agencies because of their promotion of pedophilia and what have you. But, I was just thinking about what you were saying about also like the hip hop scene and stuff too, because it's like that Marilyn Manson was a strange bird, right? Like that was an exception to an otherwise like, there's weird things, but that he was an exception to the norm. And one generation later, that exception created a space in which I guess you had the adaption, the spread, where now more and more people are finding themselves doing the what's his name? The unholy walk, this guy who's like
Sam Smith.
Sam Smith, yeah, well-rounded seeming crooner a few years ago, and all of a sudden he's doing what he's doing right now on stages and whatever else, and that's become normalized. So they just keep boundaries, right?
Yeah, and they elevate these artists for that purpose. And when you look at it through that lens, things make a lot more sense. Like, I do not think that this is an organic thing, an organic phenomenon. I think that it's a product of an industry that's ran by people who hold these very deep, dark spiritual beliefs, and they use these industries to impregnate the masses with these kinds of ideas. And it's not an organic thing that these, first it was like they had all the record labels, right? So they were able to like just control what was being played on the radio. And and when they lost control of that with the advent of MP3s, they changed their game plan, and they took control of websites like SoundCloud, where like you think you have a rapper that's coming up organically because he's got a SoundCloud following, but really they're controlling the levers that suggest his music to other kids, and you end up with kids following people like Juice WRLD and XXX and who like talk about witchcraft and who are actually like casting spells in their music and stuff, and end up killing themselves or getting killed in some sort of strange, mysterious, ritualistic kind of murder. In the case of XXXTentacion, and with Juice WRLD, he killed himself, and a lot of kids killed himself after he killed himself, and he'd rap about Xanax all the time and how depressed he was, and 666s everywhere, and like, it's a very serious problem, and people don't take it seriously enough. And it's designed to destroy society and split up families, and but at the same token, it is exposed at this point. It's never been more exposed, and you have people in the industry getting arrested for this stuff. You had the arrest of P. Diddy, who like was totally doing this stuff. Like his whole like thing was like energy like rituals, and through like sex magic and stuff, like very Crowleyan kinds of thelemic teachings that he was like really steeped in, and people like Michelle Lamy are the progenitors of that. She is someone who is very strategically placed at the cornerstone of the fashion industry and the music industry, and she's cited as a mentor to some of these rappers, and you wonder what lessons could possess like what could possess a young black guy who's got millions of dollars, can get any woman he wants that's surrounding him, he's got groupies throwing themselves at him, and he's rolling with the 80-year-old witchy white woman who looks like death, who barely speaks a word of English. She's, speaks in a thick French accent that you could barely understand. And chain smokes cigarettes, probably stinks. What is he doing hanging out with this woman? What is this really about? And when you dig into that, you realize that, I mean, she's very clear in the signs that she puts out. She's a black magician, black practitioner, and she, in my opinion, is the one that the record execs call when they say, "Hey, Michelle, I got an artist. They're looking to level up. I need you to, take them under your wing. Take them under your wing. See what they're willing to do, and get them to sign their name on the line, and that's it."
Yeah.
And she's a perfect person for that. She's been in Hollywood since the 80s. She ran some of the nightclubs that were like hot spots where the celebrities would go, and like no one else but celebrities were allowed into these places. Like You wonder what kind of stuff was going on there at 3 a.m, these after-hour spots that she owned.
It's bloody fascinating in some sick way how they have these very, very occult gatekeepers who are there to train the influencers, and that's their entire purpose by and large, is to keep those controls over the minds of a vetted grouping who will be initiated into what the hell ever, right? And you even have it in A24 movies too. There's that that new A24 movie of the football player. I forgot.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And yeah, it'll come. Damn, but yeah, I mean, they've got the story of what you could see. It's not too much of a stretch of the imagination to see how this is actually how star football players him HIM, right?
Yep.
Are organized his entire life. It seems by the end, his parents, his father, were initiates in this cult devoted to, I don't know how they're thinking about it, but the whole thing takes him into this desert wasteland because he was this potential star coming out of college, groomed his whole life, and now he's going into the next phase of his initiation, which is a pure Crowleyite OTO Saturn Lodge satanic frenzy, where he comes out of it a very different person, let's just say. And they're revealing a lot of these techniques left and right.
I think the revealing of it is it's not a sign that they're in the lead. let's say that. I think it's a sign that they are running out of steam, and the best they can do is just admit it. You know, and try to own it and try to make it sort of desensitize us to it in that kind of way, you know. But I don't think it's a good sign for them. I think, you know, they don't, at the end of the day, they don't benefit from us knowing that behind the scenes they're, you know, some of the hardest rappers are you know, taking it in the buddy, you know, doing all kinds of gay stuff on some yacht, you know, to get where they are. That's not hard, you know what I mean? It's not the flex that they might think it is, you know. People are like, ew, gross. These people, man, you know, the more you know, curtain gets pulled out, the more disgusting they are.
What do they say? They're never meet your idols. In this case, you really don't. So look, we're reaching the end of today's show, but you had mentioned that there's a very special gift for people who are watching tonight and want to watch episode 2. What do they need to do?
Yeah, so I would highly encourage everyone to check out dauntlessdialogue.com. And Adam was generous enough to create a discount code specifically for this show. It's movie night. That's one word. So I think it's all caps. I don't know if it's cap sensitive or not, but just do it anyway. It's all caps, movie night, no space. And that gets you either 50% off your first month if you do a monthly subscription, or if you get a year subscription, it's 50% off for the first year. So that's an amazing deal. And you get access to all the premium content that's on Dauntless Dialogue, and everything that's on Dauntless Dialogue is just the highest production value truth content in the game. Is you know, incredibly well researched, highly produced, you know, just impeccably sourced content that we spent a lot of time to just get the information to the point where people recognize it in the same kind of way that they recognize the kind of production value that the Cabal's been doing. Because if you can, you know, meet them on that level in the playing field, you can compete, and people will be more receptive to it, you know. And it takes a lot of work. So the best way to support it is to subscribe, and you can check out the latest release that just came out last month, which is Darkness by Design Part 2, called The High Priest of Culture. And all the questions that are left unanswered in Part 1, I think really, really get addressed and then some in Part 2. And like you said so eloquently, There's a lot of white pills in there too. There's a lot of reasons to be hopeful and to keep fighting, because I really think we have these people on the ropes.
Yeah, amen. No, I mean, like, I think it was Theodore O'Donnell who said that necrophilia is the final stage in style, and no matter how much you might try and push the idea of sex with dead corpses, that's not gonna take. It's not gonna take at some point.
Yeah.
So
doesn't matter how much sequence you put on that one.
No, exactly. And I really love the fact that, like you said, it's not a question of the info war so much. It doesn't really matter. The oligarchy doesn't really care so much about the information quantitatively that's moving around or that's exposing them. I think they kind of even like it. They kind of get giddy off it. But what they don't like is people tampering in the domain of culture, of creativity. And that's the domain that shapes our values, shapes our insights, the things that allow us to see beyond the information alone towards deeper truths that are supposed to be kept hidden from us and that the lowly serfs are not supposed to tamper with. So I love the fact that you have infringed upon that edict of Zeus and have gone, outside of that cage and are really encouraging other people to expand and to flex their creative muscles too. And sure enough, go to dauntlessdialogue.com, use the promo code, watch the films, share it, and maybe get inspired along the way as well to express your own creative, poetic powers in the current fight that we're in right now, because we need it so desperately. The sense of taste and beauty and truth together, high value. So, Adrian, thank you so much for taking the time tonight, and thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you back next Monday for another movie night with me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.